And the factoring we had yesterday was all different kinds of polynomials, but we did GCF and we did grouping. Grouping can only be done with 4 terms. Well, what we're going to see today is we're going to see trinomials, and we're going to talk about some different methods that we can use to factor trinomials. The one thing that will stay the same, and a lot of times it may not be something that we can do, but we always want to see if we can take a GCF out. And that's the first thing you always want to remind yourself of. And from here on out, we're going to see some that we're not going to necessarily have a GCF very often. And so then sometimes we forget to do that. But you always want to look, the first thing we always want to do is take a GCF out if we can do it. And from here on out, we won't see that very often. So here's the first one. X squared plus 7x plus 12. And it's just like yesterday, where it's the opposite of what we did last chapter, right? Last chapter, I would give you 2 sets of parentheses and we would FOIL it. Well, now I'm trying to determine what are the 2 parentheses, what are the 2 factors that would make x squared plus 7x plus 12. And you might have heard this called different things in the past. I call it the product and sum method because we're looking for 2 things that give me a product of 12 and a sum of 7. And there's lots of things that multiply to get 12. We could do 1 and 12. We could do 2 and 6. We could do 3 and 4. Okay? I wouldn't say lots, but several things that would work. Sometimes there might be a lot of things. In this case, these are my 3 options that multiply to get 12. So then I'm going to add those 2 numbers together. 1 and 12 makes 13. I need a sum of 7. 2 and 6 makes 8. Really close, but not quite. 3 and 4 makes 7. So these are the 2 numbers that we want. When I write my answer, we're going to say x times x, because x times x gives me x squared. And then it doesn't matter which one goes where, but it'd be x plus 3 and x plus 4. And those could be flip-flopped. You could put x plus 4 first or x plus 3 first. It doesn't really matter. Those are my 2. If I were to FOIL these 2, it would get me back to here. Okay, and so that's what we were talking about. This is the opposite of what we did last chapter. Last chapter we FOILed to get here. Now we're going backwards to get the 2 factors, the 2 things that multiply to get me to that polynomial. Okay. What's going to change, I'm going to give you some different examples of this, but what's going to change is our sign. Sometimes the middle term will be negative. Sometimes this will be negative, and that's going to change. And then we're going to see some different variations as we go throughout the day today. X squared minus 9x plus 20. And I'm just going to say P and S, product and sum. You can make that little chart if you want to. You don't necessarily have to, but signs are going to be a really important thing on most of these problems. I got to make sure the signs work for all the ones that I have. So I need something that multiplies to get 20. Well, if my product is positive, then I either need 2 positives or 2 negatives, right? But because my sum is negative, that means I got to have 2 negatives here, okay? So we could do several things that go into 20. -1, -20, -2, -10. But the 2 things that we want would be -4, -5. Okay? There's not going to necessarily be a whole lot of work to show. I mean, the only work that you could show, but you don't necessarily have to show, is you could make this little chart and you could list out the things. Especially if there's a bunch of things that go into it. Like, let's say I had a number like 60 right here. There would be a lot of things that go into 60. And so you'd want to maybe make a list of all the things that would go into 60 and then figure out which one gives me the correct sum. So the chart's just a way of kind of organizing, here's all the things that I've tried, and here's the things that I need to continue to see if they work. Okay? But the goal ultimately is to make these two things work. Okay? As long as you find something that multiplies to get 20 and adds to get -9, then we're good to go. Okay, this time my product is -10, and my sum is +3. How do I get a negative product? One of each, right? One negative and one positive. So when I start to set up my parentheses here, we know x times x is x squared. I need one positive and I need one negative. Okay? And that's a good way to do it, is just to kind of set it up. We know x times x gives me x squared. I know what signs I need. The first one we did was 2 positives. The second one we did was 2 negatives. This one's 1 positive, 1 negative. And it doesn't matter which one goes where. So then I got to find two things that multiply to get -10 and add to get 3. And here's where you got to really be careful of your signs. What two numbers would we want? 5 and -2. So we got to make sure we put the 5 with the positive and 2 with the negative. And that's our answer. So that's the good thing on a lot of these, is there's not a lot of work to show, but we got to kind of come up with some numbers that make that work. Got to have a little bit of number sense as we go through. Okay, here's another one that has a negative product. But this one has a negative sum. And you got to be kind of careful on this. And here's why. One of the things that sticks out for some people on this one would be 6 and 4. Because they're going to say 6 and 4 make 24 and 6 and 4 make 10, right? Which is true, but 6 and 4 don't work for the signs here. Because I need a -24. So if I had one negative and one positive, -6 and +4 is not going to make -10. Or +6 and -4 is not going to make -10. So you got to be really careful making sure that it works for both. And there's going to be some times like that where the sign's going to matter more than anything else. So what two numbers would we be looking for here? +2, -12. And I know that for some of you, that's going to pop up easier in your head than others, right? So all you got to do is just think about all the things that go into 24. And if you're not real good with your times tables, right? Just start listing out all the things. 24 has lots of things that go into it. But I need it to be a negative. And here's the one thing that I would tell you. Because this is negative and because my sum is negative, the bigger number must be negative, right? So if I listed out all the things, I'm going to start at 1, and I'm just going to work my way up. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 doesn't go in there. 6 does. The 6, we already have 6, right? So I just start listing out the things that are going to make this work, okay? And we could have stopped right here, but in some cases, if it, -8 and 3, why did I put 5 there? Because it adds to be -5, I guess. But we're just going through 1, 2, 3, 4, and I'm just finding things that go in there until you find something that works, okay? And you got I can't stress it enough. The signs are going to be really big. And so I know that some of you, these numbers are going to pop into your head right away, and some of you may not, right? And so then you just got to kind of come up with the numbers that make it work. One thing that I have not mentioned is GCF yesterday. These do not have GCFs, or at least they haven't yet. All the ones that we've done today, there's nothing that I can take out. Okay? And I probably should have mentioned that on every single one we did, but there wasn't a GCF, so there wasn't really anything to take out, so I didn't mention it. But GCF is something we always want to look for first. Because on this next one that we're going to do, I look at all the terms, still have 3 terms, but we're looking for a GCF. So what's something that I can take out of all 3, like we did yesterday? 4x. Okay, and so that's going to be the very first thing that I do. I'm going to take out a 4x. And what we talked about yesterday is you could put that underneath each term, but we got to make sure that we divide by each one of those terms. So 4 divided by 4 would be 1. 3 x's, take 1 away, would be x squared. 20 divided by 4 would be 5. 2 x's, take 1 away. 24 divided by 4 would be 6. The x's disappear, and we're left with that. Okay, and the very last one we did on the notes yesterday, we said we could take a GCF out, and then I could still do grouping. And the same thing's going to hold true here, is that I could take a GCF out, but that doesn't necessarily mean that I'm done. I'm going to see if I can do some more to what I have left over. So as I look at this polynomial right here, x squared minus 5x plus 6, and we try to determine, is there something I can do to factor this? Because it's 3 terms, are there 2 things that multiply to get 6 and add to get negative 5? 2 and 3. Okay, and what kind of signs do we want? Both negative. Okay. So here's where you got to be careful. The 4x still stays as part of our answer because it's part of the factor. X minus 2, x minus 3. Negative 2 times negative 3 makes positive 6. Negative 2 plus negative 3 makes negative 5. And what we're saying here is this is the full factored form of this original polynomial. If I multiplied these 2 together, it would get me back here. If I took 4x and distributed it through that trinomial, it would get me back to the beginning. So if I were to multiply all these 3 things together, it would get me back to where I started. Not that you necessarily have to do that, but that's what we're trying to figure out, right? That's what we're trying to find. What are the things that multiply to get me to that place? All right, this one's a little bit different. Because it has an x squared and a y squared in it. And we're still going to do basically the same process. First of all, do all 3 of these terms have something in common? No. Okay. We've got some x's, we've got some y's, but there's nothing that goes in all 3 terms. So there's no GCF. So if we kind of break this down, first of all, x squared, we've seen that over and over again today. We know that x times x gives me x squared. Our product is a positive 12y squared. Our sum is a negative 8. So what kind of signs are we going to want here? 2 negatives. Good. Negative times a negative gives me a positive. Negative plus a negative is going to stay negative. So I need 2 negatives. Okay, and we're still doing product and sum. The difference here is that we have an x and a y. And so that's a little bit different. But we're going to say what multiplies to get 12, bless you, and adds to get negative 8. Still looking for the numbers again. 6 and 2, okay? And the only difference on this one is we're going to put a y on both of them. because negative 6y times negative 2y is positive 12y squared. To get the middle term, if you wonder where the middle term comes from, x times negative 2y would be negative 2xy. This would be negative 6xy. So negative 6 and negative 2 would be negative 8. So if you were to FOIL it back, if it doesn't look right or if it doesn't make sense, always FOIL it back out. Okay? And I know that takes a little bit of extra time. We don't always want to do that. But if you're not sure, especially on a quiz or a test, if that doesn't sound right, FOIL it back out and see if it makes sense. All right. First step. We're looking for a GCF. Do we have a GCF? Do those three things have anything in common? No. Okay. 5 and 13 are both prime numbers, right? The only thing that goes into them is 1, but taking 1 out doesn't do any good. And so And they don't all have an x, so there's no x to take out. So there's no GCF. Hey, if the one thing that's different about this problem and every other problem that we've done is we have a number in front of x squared. We haven't seen that yet today. And so that makes this problem different than all the other ones that we've done. If there's no number in front of x squared, we can do product and sum. But if there is a number in front of x squared, that means we got to do everybody's favorite factoring method. You guys remember this one? No? Nobody? Jacob? You got it. I think everybody was hoping you wouldn't say it, so that means we wouldn't do it, right? Unfortunately, that's not the case. I'm not going to throw you under the bus like that. Okay, so slide and divide. We do this when we have a leading coefficient bigger than 1. So if there's a number in front of x squared other than 1, or anything there that's not 1, then we do slide and divide. And obviously there's some different steps to this, but we still kind of do it like we do product and sum. My product is going to be multiply the outside two numbers, 5 times 6. 5 times 6 gives me 30. My sum is still the middle number, 13. So I got to find two numbers, just like I did with product and sum, two numbers that multiply to get 30, also add to get 13. What two numbers would make that work? 3 and 10. Okay. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to write those two numbers, but we're going to write them over a fraction. We're going to divide them by something. The number that we're going to divide them by is that leading coefficient. It's that 5. So we're going to divide by the leading coefficient, the number that was different. If I can reduce it, I'm going to reduce it. 3 over 5 does not reduce, 10 over 5 does. So that one, we'll leave it as x plus 2. This one does not reduce, so instead of dividing it, we're going to slide it. And we're going to slide the 5 over in front of the x. And that's where the slide and divide comes in. This one we slide, this one we divide. And that's my answer. Those are my two factors. If I were to FOIL these two together, it would get me back to that original Paul number. Okay, let's do another slide and divide. We had 10 over 5 that became 2, and that was our answer. That was our factor. This one has different signs in it. Shane, what's my product going to be here? Man, you were dancing around back there. I thought you had this. Phone a friend? Phone a calculator friend?
Negative 56.
Okay, how come? How come?
Oh, just slide it over.
Okay. 8 times negative 7, negative 56. Zach, what's my sum? Okay. Okay, now, the reason I'm making a table here is because this is a little bit bigger number, and coming up with these two numbers is going to be a little bit more difficult than most, probably. We still are going to set up our two parentheses. X times x. We know we're going to have one positive, and we're going to have one negative. And I'm going to go ahead and draw the fraction sign in here. But I got to find the two numbers. Two numbers that multiply to get negative 56, but also add to get negative 10. So the way I kind of like to organize this, as I told you before, when we have a negative product and a negative sum, that means we have more negatives than positives, right? So I'm going to start with negative 56 and 1. But if I add those two together, that's a negative 55. And then I'm going to start working my way up. 2. 2 goes in there 28 times. So negative 28, positive 2 is a negative 26. Does 3 go into 56? Nope. Okay. Does 4 go into 56? How many times? 14. So that would be the bigger number's negative, smaller number's positive. Negative 14 plus 4 is negative 10. And what do you know? That's the one we want. Okay? But that's probably not one of those products that's just going to pop right into your head. Because we don't, that's not like a common product that we typically would do. 14 times 4. So that's one where the table would come in really helpful, I think. Okay, so the two numbers that we have would be a negative 14 and a positive 4. Make sure you put them on the right side. The positive goes here, the negative goes here. What number is going to go underneath the fraction? 8. Okay, now this one's a little bit different, and this is why I wanted to do this one with you. Both of these are going to reduce, but they don't reduce to be a whole number. Like on the last one that we did, this one, it doesn't reduce to be a nice whole number. This one reduces to be x plus 1 over 2. And over here, what can we take out of both 14 and 8? 2. Yep. And so if I take a 2 out, both of those are still fractions. Okay. So we don't have a nice whole number. So that means both of these need to be slid over. But you got to reduce it first. So I'm going to slide 2 over, which is 2x plus 1. I'm going to slide 4 over, which is 4x minus 7. If we were to FOIL these two together, it should get me back to here. Okay, if you're ever having any doubt about your answer, we could always FOIL it. 2x times 4x is 8x squared. This is a negative 14 and a positive 4, which is a negative 10. 1 times negative 7, negative 7. Okay, I don't even necessarily have to write it out. You could just kind of do it in your head, see if the numbers make sense, see if they work for what I'm given. Okay, you guys kind of remember slide and divide a little bit? Yeah. Unfortunately, maybe in some cases, right? All right, here we go. Here is last one. 6x cubed minus 28 x squared y minus 48 x y squared. What are we going to do first? First question we always want to ask ourselves. Greatest common factor. Is there something I can take out of all the terms? Don't forget to do that first. Okay? So in this case, what could I take out of all three terms? I can take out some x's. Okay, 1x. Okay? Can I take out a y? No. What about numbers? Are there any numbers I could take out? 2. Can I take anything out higher than 2? Okay, does 4 go into 6? No. Okay, 4 goes into both of these. Yep. But it's got to go into all three, right? So 2 is the biggest. Okay, we were right. So 2 and an x. I'm going to divide that. You can write it underneath all of those, but you just got to remember to divide it. That's probably one of the other mistakes that gets made a lot. This is a division problem here. So 6 divided by 2 would be 3. 3 x's, take 1 away, would be 3x squared. 28, and this is going to be a minus sign. 28 divided by 2 would be 14. 2 x's, take 1 away, and a y. 48 divided by 2 would be 24. X, take an x away, y squared. Okay, are we done? Not necessarily. Okay, and so this one's a little tricky. Okay, product has got to be these two numbers together. 3 times negative 24, because I have a leading coefficient in front of the x squared. So what is 3 times negative 24? Negative 72. So I need a product of negative 72 and a sum of negative 14. Is that popping in anybody's head right away? Yeah? What is it?
4 and negative 18.
4 and negative 18?
No. Yeah.
Does it work?
I was thinking like, yes.
Okay, it does work. Yes. Negative 18 and 4. Negative 18 times 4, negative 72. Negative 18 plus 4 is negative 14. Okay? And as we've said in the last couple ones, that may not pop into your head right away. I don't expect it to pop into all your guys' heads like, oh yeah, that's negative 18.4. That's a piece of cake, right? That's why going through, try 1, try 2, try 3. Just go through until you find something that works, okay? If I can't find anything that works, then I will talk about one other thing here in just a second. But this one does work. So here's where you gotta be a little bit careful as well. One's going to be negative, and we know this is a negative 18. And one's going to be positive, so this is a positive 4. Both of these also have a y on the end because it's y squared at the end. So that's the part where you got to be a little bit careful. Now, what number is going to go underneath the fraction here? 3, right? 3. We're going to put a 3 here, and we're going to put a 3 here. Okay, 18 over 3 reduces. So that one we're done. Because it reduces to be a nice whole number, it's just 6, x minus 6y. 4 over 3 does not reduce, so the 3's got to slide over in front. Okay, now is this my answer? No, because what else do we need? The 2x. The 2x we took out at the very beginning has to come back down here as well, so that has to go out in front. If you take a GCF at the beginning, don't forget to include that on your answer as part of your answer. Okay, I know I told you that is the last one. I just want to show you this problem real quick because you're going to see at least one of these today, I think. We talked about this a little bit yesterday. Okay, using all the methods of factoring that we've done, first method is, can I take out a GCF? Nothing in common, right? So no GCF, can't take anything out. Second thing would be, can I do product and sum? Well, I can't do product and sum, but I can try to do slide and divide. What multiplies to get negative 24? 4 times negative 6, and adds to get negative 7. Okay, and here's another reason why making the chart would be a good thing. I'm going to try to find everything, and I have a sum that's negative, so I have more negatives than positives. So I'm going to do negative 24, positive 1. That becomes negative 23. Okay, then I'm going to try 2. Negative 12 and 2 makes negative 10. I'm just working my way up. Now I'm going to try 3. Negative 8 and 3 is negative 5. Negative 6 and 4 is negative 2. 5 doesn't go in there. We've already found 6, okay? We've exhausted all of our options. And we didn't find a sum that worked. So if we can't find a sum that works, then what we call this one is prime. And what I told you yesterday is if you have a prime number like 7, the only thing that goes into it is 1 and 7, right? We call it a prime number. This is what we call a prime polynomial because there's no factors for it. There are no factors. So if you ever get a situation where you can't find something that goes into it, but you won't have very many, and probably usually what I do on this test is I tell you how many prime ones you have, because in years past, I've had some people just write prime, right? And like, oh, I'm not going to go through the work and find it. But you won't have prime very often. It won't happen very often. But it is something that you might see. So I want to at least make sure you